All Elite Wrestling Fyter Fest has some stiff competition from NXT on July 8th, and also WWE has bought Evolve Wrestling's video library. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Ralph, let's talk about a big match that was announced on NXT this past Wednesday. William Regal goes on and says there will be two matches. The first one happening this coming Wednesday, where Keith Lee, Finn Balor, Johnny Gargano will face off in a triple threat match, and the winner will be the North American champion. And then we'll face Adam Cole in the NXT Championship match, which is a winner-take-all match on July 8th. So we're getting an ultimate challenge to counter-program Fyter Fest, which probably will have Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage for the AEW Championship to main event that episode of AEW Dynamite. So is this counter-programming just for the sake of this being Fyter Fest, or do you just think that NXT's just doing what they can to get people to watch?
Well, I definitely think it's some type of reaction to what AEW is doing and to try and prevent some viewers from tuning into Fyter Fest. I mean, I think that at this point, WWE and Vince McMahon specifically probably are sensing a slight threat to the NXT brand, the WWE brand from AEW, especially considering, week after week, rating-wise, viewership-wise, AEW gets the better of NXT. This past week, we've also heard rumors that Vince McMahon was involved with a lot of the creative side of NXT. If that's actually true, I guess we really don't know that just yet, but that is one of the rumors. So you have to kind of think of it this way. What has changed in NXT that would have Vince McMahon insert himself and become more involved with NXT? The thing that maybe you could point to is, say, Karrion Kross. He's somebody that probably fits that mold, the prototypical wrestler that Vince McMahon would kind of gravitate towards. The thing is, if he was that interested in Karrion Kross, he probably has the ability and the power to just call him up to the main roster. So I'm not going to say that's it. The fact that Vince McMahon has become more involved with NXT, I think, is in a direct correlation to AEW and the fact that they are continuously losing in the ratings. And that would be consistent with what we've seen with people in certain contract situations, whether that's the Revival trying to leave, people trying to get out of their contracts. Rob Gronkowski supposedly has something in his contract where, while that he's let go from a WWE contract, he cannot go to AEW. So I think that this is strictly just for competition. I can't say I blame Vince McMahon for doing this. I know the last time WWE tried to, counter some type of production from AEW, people were very upset with that. But competition is there to really make, you would hope both shows better, bring out the best in each other. So I think this is just for the sake of competition and knowing that AEW is a real thing and it's going to be here, I think, for quite some time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it definitely is here for the long term. And yes, it's a counter-programming tactic because obviously the name of the game is trying to attract as many viewers as you can. And you know what? Let's admit it, NXT and AEW do share some of the audience. It's just there. So if they can attract different fans to NXT that night, they're going to do it. And of course, with this being Fyter Fest, this is AEW's way of trying to get more viewers to their product. And they have a lot of good matches for their two nights. We're going to see Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage. We're going to see Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho. We're going to see Best Friends versus Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman Page. So they're definitely stacking their card, and NXT should do the same. Do you think NXT is going to add more big matches to this either July 1st or July 8th episodes?
Yeah, I got to say they're definitely going to be adding some more high-profile matches. When you look at it this way, I mean, yeah, there's that big match for the North American Championship, but only one person is going to win that match. You also have Karrion Kross, so you got to imagine that he will be involved in some sort of match. He'll probably be pushed directly into the title picture. So whether that's he gets involved with the match specifically and determines the outcome of it, or he's involved with another match, high-profile match, whether that's Finn Balor or something like that, I think that we're going to get a pretty stacked card, especially considering Fyter Fest. It's looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you brought up earlier that this isn't the first time WWE tried to counter-program something with AEW. We know last year at Fight for the Fallen, WWE put on the WWE Network a special event with Evolve Wrestling, which included Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano and plenty other NXT talent on that card. Here we are almost a year later from that show, and news are spreading, according to Dave Meltzer, that WWE has bought the video library of Evolve Wrestling. And not only that, it appears that Evolve Wrestling has gone to hiatus and do not plan to have future shows. So do you think this is a good move for WWE? And how do you think this shakes up the wrestling industry as a whole, that WWE has bought out one of the bigger independent promotions out there?
Assuming they're going to acquire not only just the video library, but some of the talent in the contracts there. There's always been that kind of association between Evolve Wrestling and NXT or their developmental system. So that's essentially been like a feeding system for their developmental. So guys who get a little bit of attention in Evolve Wrestling work their way up, come through NXT, and some of them eventually work their way to the main roster there. So I could say I'm not surprised that it happened, especially considering the situation right now with the pandemic, like we talk about all the time. Really, WWE and AEW, it kind of seems like those are the guys that are really kind of have the infrastructure to survive this in the long run. Some of the other ones like Ring of Honor, Impact, they can probably stay afloat for quite some time, but you need money coming in. And with fans not there and merchandise not being sold and stuff like that, becomes increasingly difficult. So I think for a company like Evolve, knowing that they can't actually put on shows, it's not surprising to me that WWE bought them out or at least purchased the video library. And, like I said, if they did in fact buy the contracts and acquire some talent with it as well, I don't think it's all that different than what we would have seen eventually, because most of those people do end up working within NXT, or guys go down from NXT and they help train and all. There's a little bit of cross promotion. So not surprising to me.
No, I totally agree, but I'm interested to see how WWE uses the Evolve Wrestling brand. Now, there were the talks of a tiered system in the WWE network, which I could kind of tell you firsthand that is happening in some aspect. It's very convoluted right now from what I've experienced. I think once this pandemic is over and we're starting to see things go back to normal, we will see some type of extra tier on the WWE network. And I think that's going to include something with Evolve Wrestling. Now, whether it be future shows, past shows, classic matches with, like you said, there's a lot of people that have gone through Evolve Wrestling and into WWE or into NXT. Heck, there's some guys even that went through and end up in AEW or NWA, like Eddie Kingston has wrestled at Evolve Wrestling. Now he's in NWA. Jon Moxley, Brody Lee, Brian Cage, Cody, the Best Friends, Darby Allin too, all went to Evolve Wrestling. And this is a big hit, I think, for the independent wrestling scene, considering this is one of the top promotions. Now that they can't run shows, are there other promotions that might fall because of this? What happens to here in Connecticut? We have Northeast Wrestling. You have Bar Wrestling, Beyond Wrestling. Is this the first domino to fall to end up hurting independent wrestling and how these guys learn the ropes and progress to the point where they become NXT or AEW wrestlers? So that's where I am worrying here.
Yeah.
Where does this go from here? For WWE's sake and getting the library, I think this is a good move for the network's sake. I think they can add a lot, put some documentaries together for the network, and even have some of these classic matches go onto the library.
Yeah, I got to agree. And, you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit there, assuming they did acquire some of the talent from Evolve. I think that, again, this is in order to prevent some of those guys, some of those larger name guys, or some of those guys that have a lot of potential from going to, an AEW, from going to a Ring of Honor, wherever they end up, right? Because ultimately, if they're not signed by WWE, whether that's at the NXT level or at the main level, they can potentially go to another rival company, and who knows what they can become. You never really know when that next big thing is going to come through in professional wrestling, and it's usually never expected. So it's not like you can really point to one individual and say, that guy is going to be the biggest thing in professional wrestling. So the more that WWE can absorb the talent and the more that money they can throw around, which we know obviously they're equipped to do things like this, and the more smaller promotions that they can acquire, that only prevents other professional wrestlers from going to rival companies. So again, I think that there's a lot of things that go into this, but I think we're naive to think that this wasn't at least done partially to prevent some of that talent from going to other promotions.
It's possible. So we'll see where it goes. And, we made some hypotheticals the other night on who we want to see in AEW. You can watch that video on the thumbnail on the screen right now. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.